Hey everyone, it's Caitlin from Really Big Plant. Thank you so much for joining me. So for this video, we are doing a big old day of plant chores. I've got a lot of cleaning to do. So we're gonna go ahead and do a bunch of spring cleanings and just do some general care and move things around and clean under them and show you some updates while I'm in different areas of my apartment. Just have a lot of things that I wanna get looking a little bit nicer today. Being honest, cleaning is not one of my fortes. I wish I felt more of an impulse to clean. I just don't. I'm a really messy person and cleaning is hard for me, honestly. So we're doing it. Don't really have a plan or an order of things to do. All I know is that I'm gonna make myself do some cleaning right now. So let's get into it.
Really big plant.
Can you even tell what this was? Maidenhair fern. The last time I watered it was on camera, so it's been like a year, and it did surprisingly well in there with no additional water for like a million years or several months. I had it under a humidity dome and I only just took it off yesterday because I wanted to use it to try to trap a bug with my Venus flytrap. And I realized that I should throw this out. Okay. These plants have spider mites. Tears. It was probably this ficus umbellata from my Hertz subscription box, which always had spider mites, and I thought I took care of it, but it's completely covered in spider mites, and it's been dropping leaves, and I kind of figured it was just doing its ficus thing and dropping tons of leaves, because I kind of underwater it too. Spider mites like plants that are stressed out, specifically plants that are stressed from being too dry. So I need to check everyone for spider mites right now, so that's what we're gonna do. So the good news is spider mites are like one of my favorite pests. Well, I mean, I don't like any of them, but if I had to choose a pest outbreak to have, I'd probably pick spider mites. Actually, no, I'd pick mealybugs because they're pretty big and easy to see and relatively easy to treat. But spider mites, they used to freak me out the most because in some ways they're the hardest to combat because there are no systemics that deal with them. But on the other hand, spider mites, in my experience, tend to not actually do that much damage unless the outbreak gets really bad. Okay, so weirdest thing, the ficus umbellata is clearly covered in something, you know, like in webbing, but I don't see any living mites on there. So when you get spider mites and you have an active infestation, you can see the mites. If you have as thick and as present of a webbing situation as I do on this ficus umbellata and it's an active infestation, if you stare at it or, you know, use a magnifying lens and stare at it for like 10 minutes like I just did and pick one, you know, tiny 1/4 inch spot to just stare at where there's webbing, you should be able to see tiny specks, maybe black ones or white ones, or even little red ones moving around. Like you should see some motion, but I just stared at this plant for ages and couldn't see anything moving on there. So I don't know what this means, to be honest, because it doesn't really make sense that you would have an infestation that just like completely dies out without exhausting its own food supply. Like the plant is still alive, so I don't really understand how it's possible that there could have been spider mites and now there aren't spider mites. And I checked on all of the plants in the surrounding area, but I don't really see mites on anything else, so I don't know what happened. I'm gonna treat the ficus umbellata and I'm gonna wash it off, but it's possible that it's just some kind of very small regular spiders. So the plants that have spider mites I'm taking into my kitchen and I'm gonna deal with them a little later. I found the spider. Okay, to be honest, I feel completely relieved to have just found 2 of those super tiny spiders. They were so small. I tried to get my hand in there for scale, but I feel relieved because I know that those are not spider mites and they're probably the culprits building these webs. The fact that I found 2 of them, all of this is adding up that there is a really intense web system on some of the plants close to the wall over there. And yeah, I feel like I just did some detective work / the spiders just like revealed themselves to me. And I don't think that I've got a spider mite issue. So, I mean, I don't want to speak too soon, but I feel really relieved to see those little spiders. And whenever I see the tiny spiders, I let them stay. I usually put them back on my plants because they eat other bugs. So they're working for me. So I don't mind these guys. I put my hair up because I thought that I was dealing with the spider mite infestation, and I think it's always a good idea to tie back your hair so that you're not accidentally like spreading spider mites around. Look, I just found this pot has some of that webbing on the outside of it. So I really feel not worried that these aren't spider mites, but just like some kind of normal spider infestation. So I need to just clean up over here to not have my apartment be taken over by spiders. But in case anyone was hoping for a little spider mite treatment plan, so what I do to treat spider mites is just spray the whole plant with neem oil every time I water it. And you don't need to like go crazy. My main neem oil advice is to not spray too much of it that the soil gets saturated with neem oil, because neem oil smells really bad in my opinion, and if you soak the soil, the smell doesn't really ever go away. I made that mistake the first time I ever used neem oil. I like soaked a bunch of plants with it, and I hated those plants for a while because they smelled so bad and I needed to repot them. So yeah, that can be a bummer. So when you use the neem oil, just lightly coat the plant, but you don't need to like, drench it. And then just do that regularly, like once a week or so for a month or 2, and that really takes care of spider mite populations. I've been down the path of trying a bunch of different pesticides, or miticides on spider mites, and they don't really work. I mean, if you want to go the chemical route, what you should know is that spider mites they're mites, they're spiders, arachnids, they are not insects. So insecticide is something that kills insects, and what you need for spider mites is a miticide, which kills mites. But I have found that they're very persistent, and a lot of times when you use chemicals on them more than other pests, they develop resistance and you get like super spider mites. And so they can't develop resistance to a physical knockdown method of washing and neem oil, or if you want to spray soap and alcohol. Although I have found personally that I think the neem oil does work a little bit better in the case of spider mites. So yeah, my spider mite treatment plan is to mix up a neem oil solution, buy a concentrate, or you can buy the pre-mixed solution. Sometimes the neem oil can't penetrate past a thick layer of webbing, so if you notice that is there, use your hand or a cloth or a sharp spray of water or neem oil to make sure that you kind of bust up some of the webs for your best, quickest path to recovery from spider mites. So I'm just gonna put the plants back now and I will tell you about some of them. This plant is a kalanchoe tomentosa. It's a panda paw or bear paw. It has a couple of names. This was actually given to me by a customer at a plant shop that I used to work at. It was a regular customer who would come in and just give us his plants. He had pots and would buy new plants and want them repotted into his old pots, and was always like, throw out my old plant. So I would take them home, and this was one of the plants that he had. It was already really big when I got it. I mean, it wasn't quite so large, but it was like trailing over the sides of the pot, and he just thought that it looked really unruly and terrible, and I thought that it was such a treasure. And it's not to be confused with the other fuzzy succulent-like plant that a lot of people have and talk about that kind of looks kind of similar. The cotyledon tomentosa, the bear paw, which has these like fatter little leaves that still have these like little brown toes. Actually, I have one. Let me grab it. I can show you. It flowered recently. There's some dried up flowers on there, but this is the little fuzzy bear paw, cotyledon tomentosa, and this is a kalanchoe tomentosa. And they do look kind of similar. And when this customer brought this plant in, he did keep saying, this plant never looked like what it was supposed to look like. It always looked so weird to me. It never looked right. It never looked right. And he was kind of a picky customer, and I just sort of dismissed it as, I don't know, like customers say weird things about their plants sometimes. And I was just like, okay, yeah, maybe it looked weird. But now that I just remembered to tell you guys about the difference between this plant and this plant, I wonder if he originally bought this plant thinking it was one of these. That would kind of make sense. Anyway, I don't know if anyone cares about this, but I'm gonna put this back. This is a pilea peperomioides, and it's suffering from a big nutrient deficiency. I'm about to dump some delayed release fertilizer pellets in here because I haven't fertilized this in a while, and it's starting to show. It's getting these like yellow spots. This is a red pineapple plant. It had a red pineapple on it for a little while. I don't think I ever showed it to you guys, but it's just an ornamental type of pineapple. These are my two hydnophytum. They're both types of myrmecophytes, ones that co-evolved with ants. So these are both known as types of ant plants because they form this big base that is like a big codex, but a lot of times they have this like hollowed out area kind of underneath or inside of them, and it gets inhabited by ants. It doesn't have to be, but they will protect the plant and cultivate good fungus, and ants do all sorts of crazy things. There's so much that they do, but the plant doesn't need the ants to survive. So these can be grown as indoor plants, and I accidentally almost killed this one. I really underwatered it, and the entire bulb like totally deflated, and I'm so surprised that it popped back. But yeah, these are fun. This is a Hydnophytum puffii, and this one is a Hydnophytum papuanum. I think that's it. Yeah, papuanum. This is another pilea that was given to me by a different customer in the same plant shop where I got the that kalanchoe I was showing you, and they complained because they felt like the pilea was too small. They ordered it online and brought the plant into the store because they wanted to exchange it for one that wasn't really small. But what was crazy is the plant they brought in had like 5 little plantlets growing, and there was like one main big one that was kind of damaged, but there were so many actively growing babies that were like more than babies. They were developing into plants and were like sizable. And I tried to convince the lady that she actually had a better plant than the one she was trying to trade it for, but she was insistent on trading it. It was like during the height of the pandemic and we weren't taking plants back into the store. And so I got to take home her pilea. So that was pretty cool because it was a really huge plant, and I divided it and gave part of it to my sister, and it's still so big. So yeah, it's all a bonus. Pulling off some of the yellow leaves though. This is a little tradescantia nanook. It's a little trash propagation from a different store I worked in. Oh my gosh, okay, you will not believe this. This is the stump of an alocasia boa that I got in 2019, and I killed it pretty quick. And I was really upset about it, and I stuck this pot away. I moved with this pot with this completely dead alocasia in it, and I don't know, I'm just so lazy that I never clean this out, and I don't know what came over me, but I decided to dump some water into this pot, like, I'm gonna pour some water in here. And then a couple weeks later, I noticed that I thought I saw something green growing from inside this stump, and thought I was maybe losing my mind, but I decided to start watering it, and I completely cannot believe that this is happening, but it is growing, and it's been dead for over 2 years. It was dead for over 2 years, just sitting in this pot in the dark, and it's got this little stump in here that's growing now. So my mind is completely blown. I cannot believe that this is making a comeback, and I feel justified in keeping this as a piece of trash. It's almost like I meant to do it. If this grows into a plant, this could be one of the greatest success stories ever in my plant collection. Knock on wood, I don't want to jinx it. Send good thoughts to this alocasia boa that is making a comeback from the dead. Necromancy is happening right here, right now in my apartment. Okay, and then this is the Hoya carnosa that I brought home in my rescuing plants from the plant shop video. This thing is doing great. It's got some pruning that needs to be done because some parts did end up dying off. The vines on here that were looking pretty bad when I brought it home did end up croaking, but it's kind of reinflating and the color is changing back actually, which I didn't think was gonna happen, but it's turning green again. Now it's looking notably healthier than it was when I brought it home. And here is the Hoya kentiana, wayetii variegata. It's doing okay. I know I said I was gonna throw it out if it kept being weird, and it's been being a little weird, you know, bits keep dying, but there are some parts that seem like they are stabilizing. This is doing okay. I think that vines that had a lot more variegation are the ones that have died off. So I think this plant just doesn't really like being variegated. That's my assessment. I don't know. This, I don't think I've shown this to you yet because I haven't had too much growth on it, and then it went through a period of being kind of sad as it acclimated to my apartment. But this is an alocasia melo. My edges are turning a little bit yellow. We're getting a little bit of leaf damage, but I'm having the first new leaf grow in my care, so that's good. I think it maybe actually needs to be potted into a much bigger pot, so I'm gonna do that soon because this pot is just really small. This one is really cool. It's got this textured leaf that reminds me of like, you know, like plastic animal figurines, like the little, you know, like a little jungle set, like little plastic dinosaurs or like a little, I don't know, elephant or something like that. It's got this texture that feels just like plastic. It's so weird. The leaves are so thick and stiff. This is a really, really cool alocasia, but I don't know why it's growing so slowly for me, but yeah, I think I probably need to pot it up. This was my compost Hoya salad, and surprise, surprise, the Hoya wayetii variegated cuttings that I put in here have died, but everything else is doing okay. This is my jade bonsai. It's a dwarf jade, a Portulacaria afra, and it is looking exactly as overgrown as it was the first time I ever showed this plant on my channel in an old plant chores video. And I pruned it back and it looks pretty much exactly the same as it did before. So I'm gonna chop it back again. It's like gotten really tall. I'm gonna cut it all the way back down. I wanna make a big dent in this, so I'm actually gonna cut it even further back than I did last time. Okay, that is what I would call a drastic pruning. I cut it back a lot because it tends to branch right from where you cut it. If you want it to turn into a bushy little shape, you need to kind of like cut it in a lot of places so that it can start to branch, so that it can start to look a little bit more like a tree and less like one really long vine that's got some random little offshoots. I cut it pretty much everywhere and it's gonna be fine. I've got all these cuttings now too that are so easy to propagate.